Right now, tonight, you could open a website and submit a request to have someone killed. It's satire, a joke by design. People keep taking it seriously anyway. You could scroll through a list of 50 celebrities, chosen back in January because an anonymous committee doesn't think they'll survive the year. Or you could visit a web page built by a group of people who died together almost 30 years ago. A page that still talks about the future like it hasn't happened yet. None of this is buried on the dark web. No special software. No invitation required. These pages sit in plain view, indexed, loading in under a second. And once you know they exist, it's hard to stop wondering why nobody has taken them down. Most websites don't disappear dramatically. There's no final message. No countdown. No warning that the end is coming. Someone simply stops paying for the domain. A server goes dark. A company folds. And within months, something that once felt permanent is just another broken link. That's the normal life cycle of the internet. But every so often you find a website that refuses to follow it. Some have survived since the earliest days of the web. Some preserve moments most people would rather forget. Others seem to serve no purpose at all, and yet someone somewhere keeps the lights on. To be clear, not everything on this list is illegal or even dangerous. Some are art. Some are archives. A couple are doing real good in the world. But all 7 leave you asking the same question. Why does this still exist? These are 7 disturbing websites that, by every normal rule of the internet, should have gone dark years ago, and somehow didn't. And the deeper we go, the harder that question gets to answer. Number 7, DeathList. At first glance, DeathList looks less like a disturbing website and more like a sports table. Every January, a new page goes up, 50 famous names. Actors, musicians, politicians, athletes. But nobody here is ranked by wealth or fame or talent. They've been chosen because an anonymous committee thinks they might not make it to New Year's. When one of them dies, the site logs it as a hit. There are rules, if you can call them that. A candidate has to be famous enough that their death would make British headlines. You can't qualify just because everyone already knows you're dying. And only half the list can carry over from the year before, meaning half of it turns over completely every single year. It sounds like something dreamed up in the internet's most cynical corner. But DeathList is older than the web itself. By the site's own account, it started in December 1986, in a bar at Warwick University. News broke that actor Cary Grant had died, and a group of students started compiling a list of who they thought might be next. Their first list went out in 1987. 31 names. One correct guess. Most people would have let it die there. Instead, they did it again. And again. Nearly 40 years later, DeathList is still publishing every January, 50 names, next to numbers and photos waiting to be checked off. Nothing on the site causes anyone's death. Nobody running it is threatening a soul. Death pools existed long before there was an internet to host them on. But there's something quietly unsettling about watching a person's mortality get turned into an annual scoreboard. A whole life, decades of relationships, choices, mistakes, love, reduced to a single line. Correct or incorrect. DeathList shouldn't still be here. And yet every January people come back to see who made the cut. But predicting when a famous person might die is one thing. The next website feels like it was built by someone trying to explain the entire universe. Number 6, 973 NEMA 973. Even the web address looks like a code. Numbers bookending a string of letters in the middle. Read those letters backwards and 2 words appear. The human. That's your first clue. It won't be your last. Opening 973.8 NEMA 973 doesn't feel like visiting a website. Feels like stepping into a maze built inside somebody else's mind. Numerical patterns. Religious symbols. Paintings. Mathematical diagrams. Alchemical texts. Historical documents. Words spelled backwards. Animated images. The number 9 again and again. Click one link and you're reading about ancient Egypt. Click again and you're in Christianity or geometry or philosophy. Another click drops you into a gallery. Another shows you a wall of repeating letters. There's no clear path through any of it. There might not even be an ending. For years, visitors treated the site like a mystery to be cracked. Some were convinced it was an alternate reality game. Others went looking for hidden instructions, secret societies, a coded religious movement, anything that would make the pieces click into place. The real explanation turned out to be simpler and somehow no less strange. The site was built by British artist David Denison. According to material preserved in its own archive, the project first appeared online around the year 2000, with early help from friends who handled hosting, coding, and animation. Posts on the site's forum still identify Dennison as its creator. The project describes itself not as a horror experience, but as a body of knowledge meant to encourage learning, philosophy, and, its own words, positive global change. Knowing that should make it feel less disturbing. It doesn't, because even once you know who built it, you still have to reckon with how much he built. This isn't one puzzle with one answer waiting at the end. It's the digital residue of a lifetime spent connecting art, religion, language, and numbers, poured page after page into a site that never stops growing. There's always another symbol, another page, another connection that might mean something. The forum is still active. People are on it right now, arguing about what it all means. Finding the man behind the maze didn't end it. It just gave the maze more people wandering around inside it. Maybe that's why it survived this long. It offers the possibility that somewhere, among thousands of fragments, there's one idea that ties everything together. Most people who go looking never find it. Some are still looking anyway. The next site is also a maze. The difference is that nothing reliable is waiting at the center of this one. Number 5. LHOHQ. The homepage introduces itself as Laughing Horse's Orifice headquarters. That's one of the only straight answers you'll get from it. Everything else feels corrupted, like a press release translated back and forth through 5 languages, then cut apart and stitched back together by a machine. Sentences start out sounding like corporate copy, then collapse into politics, religion, surveillance, psychology, conspiracy. Images layer over text. Links hide inside other links. Videos play with zero context. Some pages look like leaked documents. Others feel like satire or experimental film, or something dragged out of a forgotten conspiracy forum. You keep clicking because you assume the next page will explain the last one. It never does. The domain was registered in November 2007. It's still active today. The main page describes services that sound almost impossible. Neurolinguistic programming, human networks, psychological control, while other corners of the site hide short films and pages of heavily distorted text and image. The easy explanation is that LHOHQ is one enormous internet art project. Collage, appropriation, broken language, paranoia. It fits neatly into a long tradition of experimental online art, possibly built to parody exactly how governments, corporations, and conspiracy theorists actually talk. But there's a problem with the easy explanation. I couldn't find anyone willing to put their name to it. No creator has ever stepped forward with an authoritative account of who built this, or what it's supposed to mean. There are theories. There are supposed discoveries, alleged connections, confident posts explaining exactly what it all really means. None of it is evidence. And LHOHQ seems almost engineered to turn uncertainty into conspiracy. Spend long enough clicking through unrelated documents and distorted sentences, and your brain starts doing the work for it. A repeated phrase starts to feel deliberate. A familiar symbol becomes a clue. An ordinary government document starts to feel like it was placed there specifically for you to find. The site never has to tell you there's a hidden message. You build one yourself. That might be the actual experiment. LHOHQ isn't disturbing because we know what it's doing. It's disturbing because we don't. Could be satire. It could be art. It could be one person's decades-long archive of internet debris, stitched together for no audience but himself. Whatever it is, somebody has kept the domain paid up for almost 20 years. And it's still out there, waiting for the next person to decide what it means. The next site is easier to understand. That doesn't make it easier to look at. Number 4, MyDeathSpace. In the early years of social media, every platform was built on one quiet assumption: that its users were alive. A MySpace profile captured someone at a specific moment. Their favorite songs autoplayed. Friends left comments in the margins. Photos held relationships, parties, holidays, ordinary days nobody thought twice about at the time. Then a user died. And the profile just stayed up. The music kept playing. The photos were still there. Friends kept leaving messages for someone who would never read another word of them. In 2005, a California paralegal named Mike Patterson started collecting these profiles. It began as a LiveJournal community before becoming its own website in early 2006. He called it MyDeathSpace. Every entry paired a death notice or news report with the deceased person's social media profile, so visitors could read what happened to someone, then scroll straight into the life that existed right before it. By 2007, the site had thousands of entries and a sprawling discussion community. Patterson said part of the goal was to warn younger users about the things that were actually getting people killed: reckless driving, drug use. Critics saw something else in it: voyeurism. None of the people archived on MyDeathSpace chose to be part of a public death catalog. Their profiles were built to talk to friends, not to serve as the last chapter in a stranger's true crime scroll. The site raised a question social media companies still haven't fully answered. Who owns your identity once you're gone? Your family? The platform? The public? Nobody at all? MyDeathSpace is still online. Its archive still holds stories of accidents, overdoses, illnesses, murders. Its forum is still active. Some visitors treat it like a memorial. Others call it exploitation. The most disturbing part might be that both are true at once. A single profile can comfort someone who's grieving and, in the very same thread, pull in strangers who just want to gawk at a tragedy. MyDeathSpace didn't create the internet's digital ghosts. It just gathered them into one address. We're a little past the halfway mark now, and so far, every site on this list comes with an explanation that lets you sleep fine: grief, curiosity, art, one man's private obsession poured into a webpage. Even DeathList is really just bad taste with a scoreboard. The next three don't let you off that easy. Each one gets a little harder to explain. And the site waiting at number 1 isn't disturbing because of what somebody built. It's disturbing because of what its creators never got the chance to take down. Number 3, PlaneCrashInfo's last words. PlaneCrashInfo doesn't look sinister at first. No frightening images. No dramatic animation. No warning messages. It looks like an old research database because that's mostly what it is. Run by Richard Kibabjian, the site has been online since 1997, cataloging fatal aviation accidents back to the earliest decades of powered flight, and still adding new ones. You can search by year, airline, location, aircraft type, cause. And then there's a section labeled last words. Inside, cockpit voice recorder transcripts, air traffic control communications, and in some cases actual audio, tied to fatal crashes. They're laid out like a spreadsheet. Date, airline, flight number, final recorded statement. Click 1, and you're reading a transcript of a crew trying to understand and control an emergency, sometimes right up until the recording simply stops. Cockpit recordings matter. Investigators use them to reconstruct what happened, find what failed, make the next flight safer. But pull a crew's final sentences out of the full investigation, and they stop being technical evidence. They become last words. That's what makes this section so hard to sit with. There's no fictional monster here. No coded message. No question about whether any of it really happened. You already know how every transcript ends. You can defend the site as an educational archive, and it is one. It preserves aviation history, gathers information that's genuinely hard to find elsewhere, invites corrections, links out to aviation safety resources. But it also puts some of the most private, terrifying seconds of a person's life a couple of clicks away from anyone who's simply curious. And unlike an art project or a puzzle, there's nothing here to solve. The voices are real. The people were real. The ending never changes no matter how many times you press play. Still, PlaneCrashInfo isn't the most disturbing site on this list. Because the next one has received messages from people who weren't documenting a death that already happened. They were trying to arrange one. Number 2, RentAHitman. RentAHitman looks like a joke because it is one. Absurd corporate language. Fake testimonials. References to legally compliant assassins. Warnings and winks scattered everywhere, practically begging you not to take it seriously. People keep trying to hire it anyway. The domain was registered in 2005 by Bob Innes, who, with a few friends, planned to launch an IT business focused on network security. The word hit was supposed to mean website traffic. Hits like clicks. The business never got off the ground. Innes kept the domain mostly out of habit. Years later he finally checked the inbox. Inside were messages from people who appeared to be requesting actual contract killings. At first, most read like jokes or spam. Then came a message with names, addresses, and enough specific detail to suggest someone might genuinely be in danger. Innes handed it to law enforcement. After that, he rebuilt the abandoned domain into the parody it is today. The jokes got broader, more obvious. The serious requests kept arriving anyway. When one looks credible, it still gets forwarded to police. The most unbelievable part of RentAHitman isn't that people misread it. It's what they're willing to hand over once they think it's real. Names, photographs, addresses, motives, contact information, sometimes their own identity. No disguise at all. One federal case involved a man in New Mexico who submitted repeated requests through the site, seeking the death of his girlfriend's mother. According to the Department of Justice, he supplied identifying details and photographs, then kept talking, this time to an undercover federal agent posing as the killer he thought he'd hired. He agreed to pay around $200. In 2024, he was handed the maximum federal sentence, 10 years. Another case involved an Air National Guardsman who found the site while looking for mercenary work online. He later pleaded guilty in a separate murder-for-hire scheme. RentAHitman's current homepage claims the platform has helped expose or interrupt more than 200 potential violent crimes. That number comes from the site itself, but the documented prosecutions confirm at least part of it. Real people really have treated this parody like a real service. RentAHitman exists because the alternative might be worse. Shutting it down wouldn't stop anyone from wanting what they want. It would just remove one of the only places where they say it out loud to someone willing to call the police. So maybe the disturbing part isn't that this website is still online. It's that people keep giving it a reason to stay that way. And then there's the last website on this list. Built by a group that disappeared almost 30 years ago, and somehow never actually left. Number 1, Heaven's Gate. The first thing you notice is the design. A star-covered background. Bright, clashing text. Small images. Blue underlined links. The kind of page that instantly belongs to a much older internet. It doesn't imitate the 1990s. It survived them. This is the official website of Heaven's Gate. The group was led by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, who fused Christian ideas with belief in extraterrestrial life. Members believed human existence could be transcended by reaching what they called the next level. Through the 1990s, the group embraced the growing internet early and completely. They ran a web design business. They used their own websites and online forums to spread their teachings. These pages weren't built afterward by historians, or documentary filmmakers, or true crime YouTubers trying to reconstruct what happened. The group built them. For themselves. While they were still alive. In March 1997, the bodies of 39 Heaven's Gate members were found inside a house in Rancho Santa Fe, California. They had taken their own lives, believing a spacecraft trailing the Hale-Bopp comet had arrived to carry them to the next level. It became one of the most infamous mass deaths tied to a modern religious movement. Normally, a website connected to something like this disappears. The hosting lapses. The files get archived somewhere. A museum preserves a few screenshots behind glass. The Heaven's Gate website stayed exactly where it was. It's still there right now. The homepage still offers the group's writings, transcripts, videos. Contact information is still listed. The language is still written in present tense, like the visitor has arrived in 1997, and the final event hasn't happened yet. This isn't a server somebody simply forgot to switch off. In 2016, Vice reported that 2 former members, Mark and Sarah King, were maintaining the site and answering emails about the group's teachings. Earlier legal reporting names the Kings as trustees, responsible for the group's material after the deaths. That doesn't guarantee every message sent today gets a reply, but it confirms something stranger than an abandoned homepage left running by accident. People made a choice, deliberately, to keep this online, which makes the site several things at once. A historical record, a memorial to a tragedy, a collection of religious teaching, proof of how the early internet could find and hold isolated people who were searching for something. And for some who find it today, it may still function exactly as it was built to, not as a memorial but as an introduction to what the group believed. Most historical archives put some distance between you and the event. A curator, a frame, a plaque that says please don't touch. Heaven's Gate does the opposite. Nobody stands between you and the material. No modern redesign. No warning before you walk in. You're seeing the group almost exactly as they want it to be seen. Which is why, out of everything on this list, this is the one that stays with you. The people who built it are gone. The internet around it has completely transformed, from dial-up and plain HTML into something that now runs almost every part of daily life. But the page hasn't moved. A message, frozen at the exact moment its creators believed they were leaving this world behind. Still online. Still waiting. Still exactly where they left it, for whoever finds it next. None of these 7 websites need the dark web. No special software. No invitation. No encrypted address. They exist on the ordinary internet. Some show up in a plain Google search. Some have active communities discussing them right now. Some are maintained because they preserve history or expose real threats, or give people somewhere to remember someone they lost. So maybe calling them things that shouldn't exist isn't entirely fair. Deleting them wouldn't undo what happened behind them. It would just make it harder to see. But all 7 reveal something a little uncomfortable about how the internet actually works. A web page doesn't know what it's holding. A server can't tell the difference between art and obsession, between education and exploitation, between evidence and entertainment. It only keeps what somebody keeps paying it to keep. A list that scores death like a sport. A maze built from one man's private universe. An archive of the last things anyone ever said. A fake business fielding real requests to kill. And the last message of a group that vanished almost 30 years ago, still lit up and waiting. The internet doesn't remember everything. People decide what it remembers. And somewhere past the 7 sites we just looked at, there are thousands more forgotten pages still quietly running, kept alive by people we'll never identify, holding stories nobody's looked at in years, sitting behind links almost nobody clicks anymore. That's where we're digging next. Which one of these got under your skin the most? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. This is Buried Online. Subscribe for more true stories buried in the forgotten corners of the internet. And if you want a mystery with an actual satisfying answer, watch 5 internet mysteries solved by one tiny clue. It's on screen right now.